All right. Are we live? We're live, I think. I think we're live. So I'll just wait and see if some people jump in here, and then I'll get started. I think I'm going to start with a Starseed reading. So thanks for joining. My name's Sean, and this is How to Hero, where it's my job to help awaken the hero within you. There's a hero within all of us. And so today I wanted to talk about a couple different things. I'm going to do a Starseed reading. I'll do a Twin Flame energy reading. And then I also wanted to talk about the houses of ego, or how I've come to understand how we build the house of ego, and then how we look at demolishing it. So thanks for joining me, and I appreciate you. And also, like, if you throw questions and stuff in the comments, I'll address them as we go. I might do Q&A and stuff as well at the end or whatever too. We'll see how things go. So I'll start with the what you call it? The Starseed reading. How's everyone doing today? All right. So I'll be using this deck here, Starseed Oracle. I think you can see it there. We'll see what comes through. Happy Friday. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate your faces. All right, let's see what we got. What messages do we have for the Starseeds? All right. So the first one is, I'll put it here. Forge, don't follow. Pave a new path. Be the leader you wish you had. Right? So I often say that a lot of the reason we see all the stuff that we dislike in the world is so that we can know what's not for us, that we can know how not to do things. That's why we set ourselves up for these different encounters. That's what I believe. And I think that's what this means, is to, observe what we dislike about the world, or what we dislike about relationships, or people that are close to us, and what they're doing that we not dislike, like we're not judging them, but like we just know that that's not the right path, or that's not in alignment with us, is a better way to say it. We see that and just say, okay, that's not for me, and then we can adjust our bearings accordingly. Activated Earth. Power places, ley lines. Trust where you're led. That's awesome. And so that's, I think, just talking to the power that's been anchored into the earth now. We've had so many people waking up that the Schumann resonance has been going bananas. So many people are kind of contributing and raising their vibration, and whether they realize it or not, by healing themselves, they're healing everyone, right? So everyone around them, we're all one, and we're all one with the earth as well. So I think that this is just about those ley lines kind of getting more and more power. I've felt in meditation sort of the heart center of Gaia being empowered and crystalline in many ways. So I don't know if that's a new thing or if it's just my perception of things or what it is, but I've been seeing it kind of crystallizing. And I think that's what's happening with us as well. We're going from, what I hear, we're going from like a carbon base to a silicone crystalline base or something like that. I don't know. I've heard people talking like that, and beats me. I have no idea. But I have felt physical changes, as I'm sure many of you have, as we ascend, as we awaken. We start to feel the energy change within. It causes these shifts, right? The third card is You Got the Love. Adarian energy, codependency, boundaries. So this is about reminding us, I think, when we're being codependent, when we're needing that external validation from someone else. We have the love within, and if we want love, the love has to come from within first. We have to be the frequency of love. So we can't walk around feeling like we don't deserve love. Otherwise, people will have trouble loving us. We'll have this sort of barrier to receiving love up, if that makes sense. We want to walk around knowing that we are love, we give love, we receive love. And, you know, when we can embody that, then that's when we'll start to kind of experience much more love in our like day-to-day lives. And it's really, we're already experiencing it. We're already that, right? Like that's what we are at our source, right? At source, that's all we are. So we're always blocking ourselves from that with our usually our rational mind or shadow as well. So this is a reminder to like go within, clear out that heart space, because I think we're moving into more go energy. That's what it feels like for me anyways. It feels like we've had some time to like chill, and the energy's been kind of heavy. It's not been very movement oriented. A lot of reflection, self-reflection, and now we're moving into, I think, go time. The universe is gonna like turn on the engines, and we're just gonna start moving. That's what I think. And a lot of people are gonna come into a lot of, I think, good things. I think there's gonna be a lot of relationships that like kind of come back together. That type of thing too. Do you think eventually, when the time is right, there'll be a gathering between a lot of humans who will change society greatly quickly? Yeah. So what I think is that people are awakening all over the place, right? This triggers other people to awaken. As more awaken and heal themselves, it creates more and more pathway in the consciousness collectively to move into that frequency. So that's happening, and it's getting exponentially faster. It's not like it's just getting a bit quicker. It's getting faster and faster and faster the more people are waking up. So I see that continuing. Like there's no end in sight for that. And then because of that, we also have the society at large is starting to shift paradigms, because as we wake up, we start to see that these boxes that we've created as societal constructs or things in our family, culture, whatever it is, we've built these little boxes that we live by. And that's what I was going to talk about as well later with the houses of ego. So we've built these frameworks that we must live by, or that we these limiting beliefs that we construct around ourselves. And as we wake up, those we start to see over the walls, sort of, or through the walls, right? We start to realize, oh, that wall's like not real. And, you know, it's constructed out of this belief that I had that I learned about when I was 5 years old, when my aunt yelled at me for playing with the spiders or something, right? Like you learned that you were scared of spiders. I don't know, who knows, right? But these types of things. So as far as like drastic change goes with like a government type thing, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go. I mean, of course, nobody's sure how that's going to go. So for me to even think I'd be sure. But what I think will happen is I think that the governments will start to understand things at a galactic level. So disclosure is happening and contact. So different beings, different humans are coming out, like myself, as having contact with extraterrestrial groups, and just being very upfront that we are essentially extraterrestrials in like a human uniform, and being messengers for those teams. And this is the first step to, well, not the first step, but this is one in many steps of disclosure. This is opening pathways for the collective to be like, okay, these fairly well-spoken, normal-ish people are saying this. They don't have a history of doing things like this. They're not mentally unstable, whatever. They're not really benefiting from it. And it starts to establish a sort of normalcy to that type of thing, which then allows for the next stage. And I'm not exactly privy to what the next stage is yet, to be honest with you. But I imagine the next major stage will be a direct and worldwide sort of announcement of like, hello, we've been working with you for a long time now. Nice to meet you officially, sort of thing, where, you know, the presence will be known throughout the world more or less instantaneously and won't be able to be really ignored. That's what I believe will happen. And when that occurs, humanity will very quickly go, okay, we're on a galactic level now. Obviously, we need to form a galactic presence, and the galactic presence won't be just like the United States, like NASA type stuff, right? It's going to be a humanity's going to have to band together and form a sort of Senate or something like that that will speak on behalf of humanity. And because of all the mistrust in government, it's all going to have to be very open, no secrets. It's going to have to be very, very transparent, because the people won't accept anything but that. Once all the disclosure happens and we understand just how much we've been lied to about all of this, once the collective really gets that, like, trusting a government official to keep a secret is going to be not something that most humans will abide anymore. So at least that's what I anticipate happening. So it really depends. There are different timelines, I would say, that could happen. There are different pathways to that victory, I think. And I think it all depends. It all depends on, you know, the receptiveness, because the collective, there's no interest at all in causing panic, right? No interest. So it doesn't, it's going to need to be to the point where, like, more or less everyone would accept the presence without tons of fear. That will be the goal, I think, before like major contact in a very real and instead of using a vessel like this to communicate through, because this still leaves a lot of doubt for people, right? A lot of people will hear me talk and say that guy's full of garbage, right? And maybe I am, right? Who knows? Who really knows? All I know for me is that this started off kind of just, okay, I've seen oneness, and then things ramped up really fast for me. So, yeah. Let me go back. Hello, Sabrine. Hello. Are we meant to see over the walls? The walls of the House of Ego? Yeah, let's talk about that now. So, I wanted to share with everyone my kind of what I've developed, I guess. I don't know if it's mine or if I've sort of pieced it from different readings, different philosophers and psychologists, doctors, whatever. I've read a lot of different stuff. And so apologies if I've stolen from someone. I don't often write things down and source it. Like, that's my Celtic background. Like, we don't make notes. And so this is just sort of my experience and what I've formulated based on what I've read about and how it felt for me as well. And it's kind of a way to visualize what ego is, where it came from, and you know, what purpose it served and stuff like that, and then how it changes as we move through awakening. And if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the comments, and if there's one I feel like I can answer, I'll go ahead and answer. So essentially, when we first come into the world, we're a blank slate, right? We're consciousness, really just experiencing everything, reality. We have no predisposition about anything other than perhaps we've formulated bonds with noises in our environment when we're in the womb, right? We've formulated an energetic bond with our mother, and we've formulated an energetic bond as well with our father. We've heard his voice and stuff like that. And perhaps other, like our siblings and things like that. We've formulated like this kind of understanding of the external environment when we're home. So we've started to feel protected in this bubble of space. And then when we're born, we start to learn all this stuff, and then things start to get imprinted on us, right? We start to like develop narratives using our memory and developing cognitively. We start to develop narratives about all these different things, right? And this is when usually we start to develop language and we start to be able to identify things. So no longer do we like we start to identify the difference between me and then this thing, and start the separation and duality sort of illusion. That starts to get reinforced at a pretty young age. And so as that gets reinforced, we start to develop, like, we'll put biases on things, like we prefer this and we don't prefer that. And then we'll start to have like our fears built up, right? We'll start to experience things that scare us, experience getting in trouble for doing things that like we didn't like. For example, most of the time when we're kids, a lot of the time we do these dumb things because we're just playing, right? We're just testing to see what happens. So we'll like just take a cup that's full of juice and just push it over just to watch it spill everywhere, because that's like that's the magic of creation, and to us that's like magical, and we're just like experimenting in the world. And then we'll get yelled at because maybe maybe the person watching us doesn't think that was appropriate, right? And they yell at us instead of like explaining to us that we don't want to make a mess or something, right? Like there's different approaches. But the more sort of emotion that ties in with it, often fear. So when we get yelled at, we're like, oh, we get scared. Usually we get scared to express that part of ourselves. And then that fear builds up over time. And that's where the ego starts to come in. Ego starts to build walls to hide our being from, like, our awareness from the aspects of ourselves that we're not okay with. Like, one example I really like is, like, let's say you're a kid that their parents stopped working, or their parents were going through a separation or something. Or no, let's say that they were both just working, like both parents working all the time, and there wasn't a lot of supervision in the house. So there was a lot of independence needed from the child. And let's say she grows up that way for a long time, so she's very independent. But because of that independence, she's tucked this kind of childlike piece of her away because she's had to be so independent all the time. And that's how she operates in the world, is by being independent. And she meets this guy who's like really childlike and full of emotion. And when she meets this guy, she sees in herself, her higher self is going to draw this guy to her, or draw her to this guy at least, because in this guy is the quality that she's hid from herself, the fragment of herself. The higher self's always trying to reunite these fragments within us. So that's why we draw these experiences to us. And this guy is going to be really enticing because he's got this childlike demeanor. But then they start dating, and then she starts to get annoyed by the qualities that drew him to her initially. And that's because he basically is showing her the parts of herself that she doesn't like. And she starts to wish that he'd be more independent, starts to wish that he'd be more of this. And so she'll typically, like, this will cause all this conflict, and then she'll leave him, and then she'll just go attract the same thing. Because she hasn't looked at that part of herself and understood that that's what she was doing. And that's why people will always, they seem to attract the same type of person into their life, and then experience the same lessons over and over and over again, because they don't objectively look at the situation and what sort of transpired. They look at it through like rose-colored lenses, I guess. And they absolve themselves usually from what took place, right? So in all relationships, it takes two people, for one. So you have a component to it. You've done things, right? You've interacted with this person, and they've done whatever they've done. So you have a component to it, and you have a responsibility for your reality, because what you experience is a reflection of what you are, what you feel inside. So everything is energetic first. You manifest it through your energy first. So if you're vibrating at this frequency of, I'll be attracting this type of person, then that's what's going to come. And so sometimes when we recognize different things that we've been sort of energetically holding, we can release it and let it go. But yeah, so as we triplet flames, yeah, I've heard of that. I have a video of that in my like in my feed. It's called Twin Flames. It's like an hour long. It's me with a lady called named Cindy, and we talk about that pretty in depth actually. So you'd probably like that. Moment where things feel so new again, like how it felt after birth. Yeah, sometimes I've felt that, where perspective shifts a lot and you see things totally new and it feels like everything's just like you said, like new again. I think that's when we've pulled some of that filter away, right? Some of that the identifications that we put on things, the labels we put on everything. When we're starting to see more truth, that's when we see it. We see things like through new eyes, almost, because we're seeing unfiltered. I think that's my theory. So onto the House of Ego. So as we start to like experience fear and shame and guilt and all that stuff from our friends and our family and these different situations, a lot of them can be really innocent, but our tiny innocent minds take them as like deep traumas, right? Like I had a friend who always was upset because he didn't have enough armpit hair or something. Like when we were just hitting puberty, he wouldn't take his shirt off and stuff, and no one understood what was going on. And it turned out it was because like his cousins or something made fun of him about not having enough armpit hair. And it really like got to him. And it's the weirdest little thing. But we develop these like insecurities, and then we build these walls to protect us from them. And there are these belief structures. And so so we start to build this ideal person, right? If we're this ideal person, then we will experience less suffering, or we'll be more happy, or we'll be perceived better, we'll be a higher status in society, things like that, or we'll be able to obtain this car and this stuff like that, and we essentially build these barriers that we keep ourselves within. And when we start to push outside of those barriers in any way and off of that trajectory that we've built up, we hear that voice inside of our head telling us that we're stupid and stuff like that, or telling us that like basically trying to push more fear, and that's our ego trying to keep us within the boundaries that we've built. And eventually what happens, and this is the first stage of like self-realization, is we take a step back. Something will force us to take a step back and look and see, oh, actually ego, this negative voice, isn't me, and these thoughts that are coming in, they're not me. I'm watching these things come in and experiencing them, so obviously that's not me. It's just a representation of energy in my being, and it's showing itself to me, and I'm the observer. And then you start to realize, oh, I'm not my body. I'm the observer of my body, and I'm controlling it through energy. And this is when the ego will start to fight back. So it starts to, this is when you start to have like a dark night of the soul. Because what happens is those walls that were built start to crumble. They start to like, that's awesome. Yeah, you do you, whatever feels good. Whatever feels good. That's what I say. Do as thou wilt, for that is the law. I've been reading some Aleister Crowley lately. But once those walls dissolve, those are the walls that used to make us feel secure and safe because we felt enclosed in this false, this illusion, but we felt safe there. So it was all normalized, right? And so we strip away our normalcy, and now we're left like standing in this like sort of exploded house, looking around, and we're exposed, right? And it feels very raw and very rough. And then what we tend to do is we start to build new belief structures. The ego has a second go at us, and we don't typically realize this is happening. We start to build more belief structures around what it means, because typically at this point we'll become spiritual in some way if we weren't already. And spiritual awakening doesn't have anything to do with becoming spiritual. So spiritual awakening is, I would just define that as that first stage of self-realization. That's the awakening stage. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with spirituality. You may not necessarily even be into anything yet. Typically you'll come seeking for something though. And then so you start to build spiritual ego, like, oh, this is what it means to be spiritual, and if I have to be in this box, and then I'm doing things the way I should do things. And then you start to see through that as well. You start to realize that, oh, okay, I've built a new house. And that's when you start to work through the spiritual ego, and you have to kind of do that again. And sometimes this will trigger another dark night of the soul. It really depends. Everybody's journey and path down this is super unique. Some people may even not really develop a spiritual ego. It sort of depends on many different things, I guess, how they interpret the information and where they're at when they wake up, and what they've been doing spiritually throughout their like earlier years and stuff like that too. And then from there it becomes a quest to usually increase vibration. And then when we increase vibration, we open up our vessels for more light, which starts to heal us more, and we heal and we start to get more contact with our guides and our angels and different entities that we work with. Are we all human extraterrestrial? That's a tough question. What I would say is we're all multidimensional divine beings. So time isn't time's an illusion, right? It's every moment where there's only now, right? And if we think of things this way and we understand that we're all one as well, like we are all one with all life and all non-life, with consciousness density, like consciousness at the first density, we're one with that as well, which is like the minerals you'd think of. And then the second density is like plants and animals. Third density is the consciousness where you start to incarnate as human. It's self-awareness, aware of the self. But we're starting to move through that and come into harvest for the next density of consciousness. But that's a whole huge topic. I think as far as are we all extraterrestrial, I don't like that word extraterrestrial really, even though I do use it just to be clear with people. We're all divine, multidimensional beings that have different origins. I would say that there are souls incarnate here that started with Earth at first density consciousness, and then evolved into second density consciousness, and then evolved into humans. So I would say that there are souls here that originated here, but there are souls that originated elsewhere and then came here and incarnated here. But all is one, right? All of it is one ecosystem. So to think of things as separate and the extraterrestrials, they're extraterrestrial, right? They're separate from. That's not the case. But the souls that originated outside of Earth, in different star systems, are advanced souls, like they're further down the path. But again, because the path is all one path, one moment of time, and we're all the same consciousness experiencing itself, there's no differentiation between the path as far as like further or further ahead or further behind. We're all in the perfect spot for this fragmentation's experience, if that makes sense. Each fragment is like a unique experience. So each, you could say Sean is a unique experience for Source to experience itself through my activities and experiences of the world. And that's why we all have these unique different experiences. But we're not able to experience the other's experience, right? We can guess at it, and we can make observations, and we can even emulate in many ways. We can empathize and feel deep empathy for their emotions, but we still can't follow the exact flow of their consciousness and understand exactly where their head's at. And also, in order to do that, we would also need to understand all their past experience and all their memories. So that's something that we can't do, right? Because we're all these unique expressions, and we're connected. But that is because that component of our connection, which is there, the ability to share that deeply, is there, but it's shut off right now. That's something that as humanity evolves, will open up the capacity to become what's called a social memory complex, which is the next stage of you might think of it as hive mind, where we're all tapped into each other's consciousness, and we can experience through each other in shared unity. And that's where, but this is many, I don't know how many years down the road. This is a long ways down the road. And if you're wondering how I know that, most likely there'll actually be a shift. So humanity, you'll have souls that want to do that and go down that collective route, and you'll have souls that want to stay unique, for whatever their reason is. Most souls will start to see that polarizing to the light, going with the group is the fastest way to polarize to the light, and that's typically the goal, is to rush that. So it depends on what that soul's like trajectory is and what their goal is. But I expect there'll probably be a split, and some people will go off on their own, and then there'll be people that want to polarize to dark and check out that weird stuff. That's an option for people as well, for souls. Yeah, so I would say we're all extraterrestrial in some, not extraterrestrial, but we're all the same thing. We're all the same fragment of Source. We're all the same originating thing. Yeah. Thank you for asking the question, though. It's a good question. It's complicated, I think, to grasp it. So now when we rebuild those spiritual houses of ego, like basically, you have to be vegan. Let's say you have this belief you have to be vegan in order to be spiritual, or to whatever it is, whatever the belief system is. There's nothing wrong with being vegan. There's nothing wrong with not being vegan. It's simply like preference, and there are two ways of viewing that reality. There's more than two ways, but there's two ways that there's a vegan and a non-vegan. They'll view the reality the same through their lens of perception and their belief structures, right? And so obviously they believe different things, and which one is right depends on what perspectives and belief structures you've started to create for yourself. When you start to be that impartial observer more in all those spiritual things too, and you start to understand that all of this is just each individual expresses and sees divinity in their own way. So those walls start to come down, because you start to understand, okay, spirituality is not about restricting. It's not about stopping people from expressing. It's not about judgment. It's about love. It's about truth. And those two things are the same thing. And it's about like compassion, forgiveness. Forgiveness is at the core of all of it. But in order to forgive properly, we need to be compassionate for ourselves. And typically, when we have these walls still built up, we have trouble being compassionate for ourselves, because whenever we push any of those boundaries, because we feel drawn to, because our higher self pushes us to push the boundaries, and then we experience a lashback from our mental body saying, hey, don't do that. That's bad, right? And then we have to push against that and build new understandings of, oh, that's actually not bad. It's just it's an opinion that I formulated from, who knows where. And there are infinite ways to even view this this particular scenario, and you can start to see that you can just shift perspective, and in that way you start to be like a shapeshifter. You start to be able to be the persona in which is most in alignment with your highest good, and that's when you're in alignment, right? But your higher self pushes you for that, and it can be like you can be it can be really confusing, I find, because after you build these sort of barriers, these belief structures, and then your higher self moves you to push against them and experience usually things that are perceived to be traumatic for you, like some sort of pain, right? It's typically pain from the mental or emotional body. And it's because, like, if it's pain from the emotional body, it's because you're telling yourself a lie, usually. The emotional guidance system is there to what doesn't feel good. It's the same way pain in the body is there, right? Pain is an indicator that something is not being, like, something's coming into our body or our energy that is not good, right? It's not what we want. And so when we feel negative emotion, it's usually an indicator that something untrue is being accepted as true. And so you can imagine, like, if somebody's telling you that you're a piece of garbage and it feels really painful, it's because you're believing them. A part of you is believing them, and depending on how much pain it is and how much it sits with you and how much it drags on you, that'll be how much of you is believing them. And this is done. We create these events through our higher selves, right? We make these contracts with other souls, and we push and pull this type of interaction in order to experience this, so that we can then look at it. Because every experience that we have, eventually we start to see every single experience, positive or negative, we should try to view it as neutral, as like that observer that I said. And if we can do that, then we can try to look at what really happened from an objective point of view, and what is the lesson, like what am I being shown here about myself. And sometimes the lesson is immediately, like, you can see it. Other times the lesson, you got to dig a little bit. Other times it's like you're lacking information, and you're not going to know the lesson until it's the right time for you to know the lesson. So it's it's important to be gentle with yourself and not rush this stuff, because I don't know, it depends on the type of person you are, I guess, but for me, everything felt urgent. Like, I had to figure everything out immediately. And like, for me, it worked out. And I think the pace you go at will end up being perfect for you regardless. Like, it's the pace that you designed is what I believe, right? So if we say that we designed this pace, obviously this is the pace we must go. So, but the main thing that I wish I did more of, I think, was be a little gentler with myself, because I blame myself for a lot of things. And I always have, I think. I've just taken responsibility for things that are not like my responsibility so much. And it's an interesting paradigm too, because you start to see that even though those things aren't your responsibility, they are your responsibility because you manifested this experience. So you're at some level responsible for everything that you see because you've projected that, if that makes sense. And then you have this like, well, am I responsible or not? And you're responsible, but you're not to judge yourself for it, is the trick. You're to self-inquire, like, why would I manifest this into my reality? Does anyone have any questions about anything I said? That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot. I'm surprised everyone's just quietly listening. I think I want to do a little tarot reading here. Or you know what? Actually, I wanted to do a twin flame energy reading. The first stream I did this one that went pretty cool, and it was the fairies and the gods, and the fairies represented the divine feminine and the gods represented divine masculine. And it was like the twins sort of having a conversation with each other. So I think we'll do that again. Because that was pretty cool. And it turned out pretty good. And now I have the second cam set up, so do that again. Okay. I gotta clean in here. It's like a nightmare. Because I'm so lazy. Lately, I've been extremely lazy. Thank you, Sabrina. I appreciate that. And don't blame yourself. Just look for the lesson. Look for the lesson in what's occurred. And then be grateful to learn the lesson, right? If you do that, then each thing happened for a purpose and served its purpose by you learning the lesson. If we don't learn the lessons, then it's like a wasted purpose, like we felt all this pain, and for what? If that makes sense? That's how I try to look at it. I try to see it as like a challenge to figure out what this lesson is. And eventually, like if you keep practicing that, it'll become second nature. I promise. You just get used to seeing everything as a lesson and then always just looking for that lesson. All right, so the gods will be the masculine. And so last time divine feminine went first. So let's see what divine masculine has to say. What energy is divine masculine transmitting to divine feminine in this moment? Actually, let me move this before they fall. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're inspired. Thank you. That makes my heart feel warm. I appreciate you. That's awesome. All right, let's hear what divine masculine has to say. I'm not sure if this will be for twin flames in union or not in union. Like, I'm not sure. We'll just see. Vishnu, balance. I'm balancing myself. I'm not there yet. I'm working on myself. I need to be perfect so that when we come into union, I am ready for you. You deserve perfection. And I'm not there. That's what I'm hearing. He'll get there though, right? It's within his path. He'll get there in divine timing. He's working on it. And let's see what she says in response. What does divine feminine say in response? Little boy blue, dreams come true, return of the soul. So I'll just put that there like that. Dreams come true. So it sounds like what I see there is that divine feminine's being rebirthed right now. Like she's going through tremendous change, upheaval, thinking about herself, and she's not ready either. So it's you know, both of you are working on the same sort of things. I think the death and rebirth has happened for the divine masculine, and the death and rebirth is happening now, I think, for divine feminine, or a stage of it at least, which is why this, you know, little baby's being born, and starting to see the dreams in the world again. And let's see what divine masculine says. Ganesha, obstacles. So I feel like there are karmic obstacles in the way. That could mean so many things. But there are karmic ties that are being worked out. There's different lessons that both of you guys have to learn. So, I mean, essentially, both the first cards are talking about how we need to achieve balance and be reborn into ourselves. That each twin has to recognize their perfection and understand their I am presence fully and really embrace things, and get a lot of sort of energetic coherence going, a lot of clean conduit, and then that will enable healing in the other karmic areas, or the healing in the karmic areas will facilitate that cleaning of the conduit as well. And so that's for both of them, I think. And I think it's just divine masculine saying, yeah, like, we know what we're doing, and this is all part of the plan, sort of thing too. Like, we created these obstacles so that we could grow through them. Let's see what divine feminine says. Barnabas and the Prince: adventures, discovery, travel, meeting destiny. So this is about, like, the time will come, destiny will come. Keep the adventurous spirit, keep the sort of the passion for life alive. Time will come. And let's see what divine masculine says. Leadership. So I feel like this isn't that divine masculine saying that he should be a leader. I think what it's doing is talking about trust in source. I think it's talking about trust in divine orchestration, because divine masculine has had a real tough time understanding the purpose of things, understanding why we set these particular obstacles, why it would be this way, right? A lot of difficulty with that. So because of that, it's things are being set up for trust, reestablish trust in divine guidance, reestablish the divine plan that you've created with your guidance, your higher guidance, and yourself, right? Like, this is everything's happening for highest and best good, and it's sort of to reestablish that trust in that. Dark Moon, this is what she says: maturation, growing up, introspection, know thyself. And I think this is just reiterating on that, saying, yeah, like, I think a large part of this is like the wish that this sounds like divine feminine says you didn't always know yourself. Like, you were in and out of knowing yourself, and I want you to know yourself, and I'm learning myself as well. Interesting. So I think that's an interesting note. So this sounds like for people that are out of union. It could be for people in union as well, I guess. But typically, I think like it has more of a non-union energy, I would say. It's hard to say. Yeah, that was pretty cool. What do you guys think of that? Is that all right? I like doing that. It's interesting the way it comes out. It seems very relative. Or relevant, I should say. All right. Does anyone have any questions or anything that I've said? Anything about anything I've said so far? Trying to think of what else to talk about. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Anita and Lay. Appreciate that. That's great. I think with twins too, it's very challenging. It's challenging because it's such a complicated energy, and it's so confusing. It's so confusing. So it's hard to know like what's going on, to be honest. I think so I think what time is it? Oh, it's 6 o'clock. Okay, so I think in closing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how to get over what was it that I wanted to talk about? How to get over like when things happen and you don't have an explanation for them. That's when we can often ruminate on that. We go over and over and over in our heads like what could that have caused that? And I found a good way to stop that. And the way to stop that is by literally like stepping outside of it and looking at the situation like instead of worrying about what happened, worry about like I was talking about earlier, the lesson. So what's the lesson, right? Because that's the important part of what happened, not why it happened. As humans, we get so tied to this like why did this happen, why and sometimes we're not meant to know. Sometimes it's the not knowing that empowers us down a particular path of healing. If we knew the answer, then we wouldn't be able to heal in the way that was necessary for us to heal, if that makes sense. If we know the cards that we're playing in poker, and we know their cards, all the people that are playing with us, then it takes our skin out of the game. I think I said this before, or Ross says it too in the Law of One, when he's talking about why we don't see all the planned things. You know, we come to learn things. It's almost on a need to know basis, especially when it comes to like divine planning. So we start to want to know more and more of the plan, and we'll often get little tidbits, right? We'll get visions of the future, and we'll start to get like little pieces of, oh, you're going to do this and this is going to happen, and so we're like, oh yes, well, show me more, and we're not meant to know the whole plan. But as humans, we like stories, right? Stories are built into everything that we do, everything that we identify with. So we constantly are making stories. We're constantly making stories about everything. And when we can't finish the story, it drives us bananas. And instead of finishing the story, know that the story went as far as it could go for now. And, you know, it's on hiatus. We'll see what happens. All the thinking in the world, like even if you come to the most likely conclusion, you still can't arrive at that conclusion because you just don't know. You don't have all the information. So there's no purpose to spinning your tires about it, because you may eventually find out, right? But the thinking all about it's not going to help you get to that. What's going to help you get to that is to let go of it, let go of the what happened, let go of why, and then let go of just look into the lesson. What lessons were there? Like look at them, learn them, and then let it go and go about your day. And it's easier said than done, but that's the process, right? Start to understand that like whether we understand it or not, that's reality, and usually it doesn't give us much benefit to ruminate on all these things. It just causes us stress, and it makes us less present, which makes us less in tune to see the synchronicities and see all the magical moments in the world. Because we're in our thoughts and we're spinning around in our fantasy land instead of paying attention to the moment and experiencing things as the observer in the now moment, right? Being mindful of our present. And if we ever need to come back to our senses, we just literally just dive into a sense. Typically, I'll breathe in really deep and just feel that come right into my lungs and hold it, and I'll imagine myself pulling in light. And that's enough for me to just bring me right back. But there's a whole bunch of different practices for that. Josephine, that's awesome. Yeah, You got this. I mean, Dark Nights of the Soul are good signs. It's signs of progress. It's signs of cycle into new beginnings and a new you, really. You'll find that when you come out of it, I think that you'll see things with a much greater perspective, and you'll have much bigger self-awareness and more self-mastery. You know, you start to understand yourself more. Somebody said that when we're awakening, we start breaking off all these pieces of ourselves, looking at them, and then putting them back together. And I really think that that's what it's like. So it's very painful in many ways, right? And for everyone, they experience it different. So, some people have longer ones and shorter ones. It really depends. The best thing that I could say is to try not to resist. Try not to resist the feelings and pull away from the different feelings that you have. When we pull away, it makes it harder for us to like deal with it. It makes us resist dealing with the lessons, which perpetuates the feelings. Really, it keeps everything going. It's like it's kind of like if you have like this wound that's bleeding and it needs treatment. If you don't treat it, it'll just bleed, right? Like you need to treat it. You need to pay attention to it and treat it. It's kind of like that. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it. But another way to look at it is it's stored energy that needs to be shone. You need to shine your light of awareness onto it and like heal it, feel it, and understand where it came from, and then let go of it with like compassion and love. So I think that's it. I think I gotta get off. I think this was a shorter stream than normal, but I appreciate everybody coming. Appreciate you spending your time with me. If you enjoyed it, click the like button. It helps with the channel. If you're not already subscribed, click on the subscribe and the bell so you can get notified when I go live. And a couple people have been asking for private readings. So what I'm going to do is set up probably a Fiverr link. This is what I'm thinking. And you can go on there and I'll have different packages, I guess. And then you can just pick one. And I'll do, I'm not sure if I'll do one-to-one live ones or if I'll do recorded videos. Probably recorded videos just so that I can manage my schedule. I guess it depends on the demand and stuff like that. But I don't know if I could facilitate one-to-one calls for that. It'd be too much chaos, I think. But I could send videos of readings and stuff like that. And so I'll share that when I have that all set up, and we'll get that going. And so I appreciate all your faces. Love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate you so much. Also stay in touch or stay in tune. Try to look for the opportunities to get moving on some of the things that you want. I think the universe is shifting. Going to give more energy to pushing forward on some of your wants and some of the manifestations that you're thinking about for yourself and what you want to be doing. I feel like energy is shifting into that. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks.